Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Tired of
Dowhouse,
hearing about Mr. Pointless in fantasy.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome in to Operation Domination, available on every single one of your favorite podcast apps, and of course, streaming on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. Please subscribe and hit the bell notification to get notified whenever we have new content available to you, which is every single day. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined here with Chase Thornton, Chris D, and Adam LaRue. Fresh off the draft weekend, Adam and Chris did a great job holding down the fort last week with their landing episode. Chase was actually at the draft in Green Bay, giving us some inside looks in the press conferences. And my voice is still recovering from 9 hours of streaming between Thursday and Friday because we were going hard at the Crow's Nest restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee, and again on Friday night. It was a great time that we had, and we get to cover every little thing, at least for the first 3 rounds. But there was a lot that happened afterwards, and today's show is going to be about those rookie picks. Where should you be taking them? I know some people have already started their draft, absolutely. But if you're like me and you're in slow drafts, a lot of those are probably still going on or getting ready to start later this week. So we're here to help sort it out and see what changed from our pre-draft rankings. So, gentlemen, we have a nice 4-round 12 team. We're doing it startup style, so it's going to be, snake draft, reversing the order there from round to round to round, so we can all kind of get a chance to talk about some high and low guys depending upon where we picked. Chase, Chris D, Adam are all in here along with me at the back tail end. So let's get this thing started, shall we? And this is a super flex league, just in case anybody was wondering. That has become the industry standard. So Chase is on the clock while he is picking. Ashton Genty and Omarion Hampton went right off the board. Chris, Adam, let Chase pick while he's doing that. Talk to me a little bit. Does Omarion Hampton keep the number 2 spot like he has been consistently going before the NFL draft took off, even though he's going to have to potentially share some time with Najee Harris for at least one season?
Yeah, for me, Dan, it's a little rich for my blood. I love Omarion Hampton. I love the skill. In general, we talked about this running back draft depth and how much availability skills there are throughout this draft, possibly. So I'm not going to necessarily jump on where I see some other positions might be much more shallow. The top end receivers, for example, the top end tight ends, for example, and even the quarterbacks are very shallow. So I'm not necessarily going to be jumping on Omarion Hampton at number 2. I think it's a little rich for my blood. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, it's a bit rich for me. I've seen him go pretty much exclusively in that top 4, but for me, I think he's a little bit closer to like 5 or 6, just based on there's a lot of guys who landed in better spots. I think the Najee situation, I think he's going to be a great back, and that's going to be a high-volume rushing attack. But nonetheless, I don't think he's going to be the pure workhorse lead dog that he necessarily could have been, or that people could have foreseen him being, pre-draft.
I mean, certainly for one season, yes, but in 2026, when Najee's contract is up, we could see him wind up being that guy later on. We'd have to see. Chris, you're on the clock. Chase, you decided to take Cam Ward, who fell to you with that 3rd pick. So talk me through that.
Well, the way I'm looking at it is if I'm drafting 3rd in a super flex draft, I'm probably in a rebuild, and that means I'm going to be prioritizing quarterbacks and wide receivers. So the choice was definitely between Ward and Hunter there. To be honest with you, in the super flex format, I'm going to go Cam Ward over that just because he's going to be the more valuable player in terms of, total points scored. So
Yeah, I mean, he's the only quarterback worth taking in the top 5. So,
yes.
Again, it's a super flex league. If you need a quarterback, to me, it's the only safe pick to have. We know Cam Ward's going to be the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans come week 1. There's not too many other guys other than maybe somebody we'll talk about later on, Tyler Shuck, where that actually might be the case with this class. I don't think it's going to be Jackson Dart because they signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I don't think their game plan was to have Jackson Dart be the starter week 1. And we also don't know how great he's going to be. He has a long learning curve coming out of Ole Miss. So all that kind of ties into it. Adam, what's your take on Cam Ward, and what do you think his dynasty value truly is, even though he's maybe not that surefire number one pick that we're used to seeing?
Yeah, look, I like Cam Ward a lot. He was my QB1. He was the closest thing I had to a pure first-round grade on a quarterback in this cycle. But for me, like, we talked about how Tennessee was making the right pick at number 1 overall. Just saying, like, it was the right pick for Tennessee. The landing spot in itself, like looking at it from a dynasty perspective, really just isn't that great. The weapons aren't great. The line is getting in the right direction, but still not great. The fit from a scheme perspective is a little bit weird. Like, I think there are real questions about, him being a true alpha quarterback from a dynasty perspective. The closest thing we have to that in this draft, you're still taking him. I think he's in that top 3, top 4 tier, but definitely someone who I'm a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, so you go in there, you have Calvin Ridley. I don't know if I really care about signing the ghost of Tyler Lockett, because that all kind of comes into play too here. I'm not really that enthralled with their weapons. I think Pollard's a nice player. Spears is a nice player, but nothing to ride home about. You're going to have some competition at the tight end position. This is a team that has a lot of needs. So, Chris, why Jaden Higgins so high? I don't know if I've seen him go 107 yet in rookie drafts.
I've seen a lot of people jumping really high on the running backs, because Adam kind of alluded to, there's a lot of running backs that are going to be splitting time, and it's not a guarantee how much involvement they're going to have, particularly that first year. While I look at a passing attack of the Texans that absolutely need a second receiver, we've seen different guys eat, whether it was Noah Brown, who's not the most talented guy in the world. We've seen Tank Dell have a great rookie year. So for me, Jaden Higgins is that guy. On the other side, Nico Collins, he runs all the easy routes, and he does a lot of things a lot of things that we saw out of the Chargers guy, McConkey, last year. He's able to kind of be a PPR machine, I think, and also a guy who's effective in the red zone. So I think he's one of those guys people are going to overlook. While they love the names, he's actually one of the guys I think is going to have the production and be a solid player.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny the Houston Texans took both the Iowa State wide receivers. Let's add another caveat, and Chase, let me get you in on this conversation. They bring in weapons, but other than drafting Ariante Ursary, the offensive tackle in Minnesota, which is a bit of a project pick in the second round, they didn't really address the offensive line, which still seems like a huge need. So when you're looking at that for C.J. Stroud and the projection of this offense, does that concern you? Or like, look, you have better weapons. I'm going to trust the coaching staff, the new OC, to get it figured out and utilize those weapons and figure out some kind of game scheme to make the offensive line okay.
He's got new weapons. I don't necessarily know that his weapons were the problem always last year, though. I agree with you. I think that they need to get that line squared away, because if he's not going to be comfortable back there, he's not going to be able to, find those weapons no matter who they got for him. Having Collins be healthy the whole time should help. Having Higgins there, having Noel there can help, but he's got to be able to, he still has to be able to have the time to throw them, and he has to be comfortable enough to look for them and make those throws. So I would like to see them address that offensive line even more. We'll see it here now. Guys start getting cut. We'll see if they do continue to make moves along that line or not.
No, that's absolutely fair. So while we get Adam back to the clock, we will circle back around to his first round pick. I'll talk about my guys, Caleb Johnson and Trey Harris. I went back to back. I had the 112, and again, we're doing a snake draft league, so I get the 2-1 coming right back. And this is mostly because I got robbed here. I mean, Quinshon Judkins came off the board. RJ Harvey came off the board. So I was kind of sitting here looking for one of these running backs to fall. Caleb Johnson, to me, is that next tier break. He goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 3rd round. And you got to figure, at bare minimum, no matter what you think about the guy, he's going to step in with the Najee Harris role, right? He's going to get those bulk of the work carries, 1st and 2nd down, most likely goal line, fits Arthur Smith. I mean, I kind of feel like I talked about this during the pre-draft combine, that Caleb Johnson reminded me a bit of Najee Harris in the sense of he was going to need to go to a system that had a old school minded coach, because he might get pigeonholed out of the passing down role. And while that bothers us a little bit as fantasy owners, if you're a powerful back in that type of scheme, you're going to get enough touches, I think, to still be potentially a top, let's say, 15 running back in fantasy. If he's able to show some of the bursts and some of the big plays that he was able to do in Iowa, despite the disappointing 40, well, then he might be a little bit more efficient. He might be a little bit more exposed than Najee Harris. So wait to be seen. But I think there's some untapped potential we could possibly see in the scheme there too. And then Trey Harris, Well, I love the landing spot. First of all, I already had Trey Harris, my number 2 wide receiver, coming off. He's a big, physical, violent type of perimeter receiver. And those are the type of guys I love because they're going to be target earners and they're guys that get physical with those top outside cornerbacks. There wasn't a lot of receivers who are true perimeter threats. And Trey Harris is also the perfect complement to Ladd McConkey, joining Justin Herbert, who's a good quarterback. Greg Roman looked like he went from being, smash mouth football to like, I'm willing to throw it around now that I have Justin Herbert last season. And I'm just really excited about the fit there and the possibility of getting a true X wide receiver. Adam, I'd love to get your take, and then you can talk about your picks.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm actually really high on Trey Harris on my Dynasty big board. He is, for me, I think he's worth a first-round pick towards the end of the first round. So I'm excited there. Caleb Johnson is another guy who I think it's a really good gamble. I think it's a really good landing spot for him. So, yeah, I think 2 really good picks.
I appreciate it. So talk about yours. We didn't get to talk about your first round pick because you got back on the clock so fast. So RJ Harvey, 108. Also probably the highest I've seen him go so far.
Yeah, for me, post-draft, I think he's the running back after Hampton for me. I think the landing spot is really, really good for him. I think of all of the rookie running backs, he got the best run-blocking offensive line, first and foremost. And I think in terms of landing spot, as far as competition goes, I think he is the 1A at worst, if not just being the straight-up 1. It's how much you want the opposite skill set and estimate involved, whether that's him just taking some of the carries or the carries are 50-50 and Harvey's all of the receptions. But either way, I think he gets the bulk of the workload for Denver offense that showed some juice at points through last season. And I think he's a really explosive piece for a team that was efficient on offense but needed an identity. And I think that he could be a part of that.
It was really interesting because I think of all the people who benefit from draft capital, especially in this running back class, it was RJ Harvey because
100%.
A lot of people liked him, right? But no one really knew, is he going to go in the second round? Is he going to go in the 4th round? And he goes the second round to the Denver Broncos, where we can easily pencil him in as being the week 1 starter, to your point, with a scheme. Here's the other thing I like about RJ Harvey with Sean Payton. It's not the mixture of with Sean Payton. It's the fact that he is kind of a tweener back where he can do a little bit of the running and a little bit of the passing. He's not a type of guy who has a profile where he's going to be pigeonholed into one little thing. And that's what I worry about when running backs get with Sean Payton, because he will do this specialized thing. He's done it throughout his career when he doesn't have a go-to running back. RJ Harvey falls enough in between where I think he can be that guy and actually get the bulk of the work that we're looking for. Now, Adam's back on the clock in the 3rd round, so we'll get back to his 2nd round pick. Chris, let's go to you. Your 2nd round pick wound up being Cam Scatterbo, who didn't go to the 4th round, but I think a lot of people are excited about the opportunity he has in his landing spot. Why don't you talk about him?
Well, as Adam alluded to, one of the guys I was definitely eyeing was Harvey. I was hoping to kind of fall there. But to me, I have Scatterbo and Harvey around that same kind of range. Those guys that are going to be involved. You're not exactly sure how much they're going to be involved, but you figure moving forward, they have a good chance to kind of be the bell cow guys. What I like about Scatterbo is that he's going to be a guy who's going to be utilized in the red zone, a guy who is going to be able to get the short yardage, but also a good pass catcher. So I like the floor, but I also like the ceiling. And I feel like he's one of those guys that, after Harvey, he's one of the safer running backs you can have in this draft.
Yeah, I don't care that he went in the 4th round, frankly, because, again, Chris, to your point, one, he pairs up great with Tyrone Tracy. I think they're perfect complements to each other, number 1. I don't expect Cam Scatterbo to come in and get a workhorse role, but we all know he can be a receiver. He's got good burst. And I think between him and Tyrone Tracy, I think both of these guys can be top 24 running backs at the same time, given what they specialize in. I mean, this might be a full rotation rather than a situational rotation between these two. And it's an offense built around, checking the ball down to the running back. That's what Brian Daboll really likes to do. He's shown it in the past. Now, I don't know what we're going to get with Russell Wilson, who maybe it's the Arthur Smith effect, but didn't really check the ball down much in Pittsburgh last season compared to what he had done in previous years. But I suspect, given that you have Malik Neighbors and not a whole else in New York, you have a decent chance of that happening here again, too. So I am a big fan of the pick. I still have him in the mid-2nd round, despite what people might have been questioning with his athletic ability. And so let's head back to Adam, because now you talk about Tyler Shuck, who I said we probably get to mention too, and then obviously you went ahead and picked them, so you could talk about him. So talk about Tyler Shuck to me going in 2-5 for you.
Yeah, he got picked a little bit earlier than I would have expected or had him graded as necessarily, but at the end of the day, He is a high second-round quarterback. He is a quarterback who I think that, we're looking at 50+% chance that he's the week 1 starter. I think that really his only competition is Carr's health. I think that's really what it boils down to. I think otherwise he's going to be the starter. And I think that, look, we've just seen that that's the value that starting quarterbacks have in Superflex. I mean, Darnold is worth a late first. Plenty of guys who, like Geno, is still worth an early second. Like, if you're a starting quarterback with a pulse, you are going to be worth an early second. So I think that he's just someone who the percentage chance of me being able to recoup on my investment is fairly high. So mid-second, I mean, if he's starting by the end of the season, I can easily flip that for a 1 because someone's going to buy into a rookie quarterback that starts for a season no matter what. So I just, I think the ability to recoup on it is pretty high.
100%, yeah, because if he comes out and pops, then this actually might be a trade asset, despite the fact that I think there is some danger that the Saints are picking high enough where they replace him right away. And that's kind of the danger when you come with a second-round quarterback who's as old as he is, frankly. And then when we go to the Chase's pick in the second round, little bum to Kyle Williams. So I was hoping he'd fall, but of course not. So 210, Kyle Williams, one of my favorite receivers. Chase, what made you want to take him at the 210?
Well, I'm hoping, maybe against all hope, but I'm hoping that finally the New England Patriots franchise got it right when they drafted a wide receiver. Yeah, like you said, I liked Kyle Williams too. I liked everything that I saw of him coming out of college, and he lands in a spot here where honestly, Stephon Diggs is there, but I think that he's got a chance to grow with Drake May and become his favorite target there, his number 1 target there. And I'm willing to take a shot on that late in the second round.
No, okay. Can't argue with that too strongly. I'm just trying to make my picks here real quick so we can get moving on this, trying to find everybody. Okay, so here we go. So you went with Kyle Williams second round. You explained why. I agree with you. He's got a chance to be the number 1 receiver on a team that has a really good quarterback. Now, I'm not a big fan of Josh McDaniels, but Kyle Williams will run those short intermediate patterns that McDaniels wants his offense to pretty much rotate around, frankly. I'm not thrilled with all the receivers they took from last year. Like, I don't care really that much about Pop Douglas. I don't care about the kid out of Washington who I'm drawing a blank on now all of a sudden, or even Javon Baker for that matter. Like, it's just not a lot to write home about. Now, they did sign Stephon Diggs, but Stephon Diggs is coming off of a serious injury and somebody who didn't look like he could separate at a great level even before the injury in Houston last season. So veteran presence, maybe they try to funnel it to him, but I don't think that's a guarantee. I don't think it's a guarantee he's necessarily playing the first few weeks of the season. So what happens if Kyle Williams is able to come in and establish himself right away? Drake may not go to him. But you went with Alik Aomanor in the third round. Now, he wound up having 4th round draft capital. I think that's a little bit lower than what consensus was expecting, but I know I wasn't a big fan. You take him in the 3rd round, getting drafted by Tennessee Titans in the 4th round, the NFL draft. Walk me through that. I
did like him coming up through the draft process. Like I said, I mean, he's on tape absolutely destroying Travis Hunter in that one game. And I know everybody pointed to that, but the talent is there. The size is there. And honestly, he's got a chance. He really has a chance to be the number 2 receiver in Tennessee this year. There is every opportunity for him to be the starter across from Calvin Ridley. And, with that being the case, like I said, I'm coming at this like my team is in a rebuild, and I wasn't sure he'd be around when I came back around. I'm willing to take that shot.
Can't blame you there. Chris, were you going Gunnar Helm? Was that going to be your 4th round pick?
No, it was going to be Gatson.
It's going to be Gatson. All right. Hang on 1 second while I fix this. Because, Chris, the old person technology challenge, this is kind of what we have to just go through a little bit on this show and deal with that.
What Dan's not telling you is he pauses it, then unpauses it. You're not always sure when he's unpausing it either.
Know who your player is going to be and pause to save you. Who are you going, Gatson?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get that pick.
Made my
pick figured out there. We're stealing things from Chase over here. But Chris, talk to me about Jalen Royals, who's your 3rd round pick.
Yeah, so you talked about Chase kind of jumped on the guy that I was hoping he went 5 to me in Williams, and then I was looking at some of the tight end positions, but like I had a little bit of run right before me. So then I wanted to look at another receiver, and Royals to me is one of those receivers that while might not hit the ground run necessarily that first year, has a lot of opportunity moving forward. We don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. He could go slam into another wall. Who knows with this guy? You have Marquise Brown, who's been banged up. He only played about 3 games last year for the Chiefs. He's only on a 1-year deal. You have Xavier Worthy, who's a guy that they're still trying to figure out how to kind of manufacture touches. And what it reminds me of when it comes to Royals is he's got a kind of a combination of both, where he's got a little bit of Worthy in his quickness, and you can kind of get the ball in his hands different ways to create. But he's also kind of a lot where Rice was, where he's able to catch that underneath stuff, make something happen with the ball. And you saw how effective that was for that Kansas City Chiefs offense. I think the Chiefs in general, with the improvement in offensive line, are going to throw the ball a lot more. And I think Jalen Royals is going to be a guy that has high upside, especially down the road.
Okay. All right. I don't disagree. By the way, I was super excited when the Chiefs took him. Rashee Rice is a big slot. Xavier Worthy is the big play guy. They have a role open for that opposite perimeter receiver, especially a possession receiver that kind of fit in. And he fits perfectly with those two. He's not going to take away from Rice the targets. He's not going to take away from the Worthy targets. I guess the question becomes, Chris, I'll go back to you on this because you took Jalen Royals. Does Patrick Mahomes start opening it up again? Because it's been a few years since we've been able to see that.
I'm in a big belief that he is. I think that's where you saw that they did try to make a conscious effort to address the offensive line. You saw that they spent some extra kind of attention on weapons in the passing game. Even some of the undrafted free agent guys they brought in, they bring in some guys in who can kind of create and some guys who can get down the field. I think Patrick Mahomes took the Super Bowl very personally, and I think he's going to be the one that wants to kind of, will this team forward. We saw the offensive line wasn't really opening holes for Pacheco. The running game really wasn't successful. Bringing back Kareem Hunt doesn't impress me. I think this is going to be a pass-first team moving forward.
I mean, it might be the all-injury team, right? Pacheco, we'll see if he's able to get back his burst coming off of his injury. Kareem Hunt's old and ancient and needs a wheelchair to get past the line of scrimmage. Elijah Mitchell, who they signed in the offseason, can't get through a practice without breaking his knee. I mean, it's really interesting. And somebody I will try to make time for us to talk about is that they drafted later on the running back position that could be a deep, dark sleeper. We'll talk about that later. But I want to get to Adam. You took Jaden Blue, the only running back the Dallas Cowboys decided to draft. As much as they needed running back, that's where they decided to go on day 3. So what does he like about Jaden Blue? Is the potential playing time that he might get, or is the skill set, or is it both?
I do like the skill set. He was more of a sleeper back for me, a day 3 type back. I don't think they reached on him or anything, but I also don't think that he necessarily fell to them. I think 4th round, where it was a 4th or 5th. Either way, think about right. What I liked the most about him and why out of that running back room, this is kind of where I want to go, because they did also get Phil Maffa. Where I'm interested in him is that he's the only unique skill set in the group. Pretty much all the rest of them are plotters. Everyone else, power guys, certainly some of them have some long speed, but not very much shiftiness. He's kind of the one guy in his own lane, and that just makes him be the one that, I kind of want to gamble on. This is a team that invested in their offensive line early in Booker. So one that, I certainly suspect is going to want to run the ball, despite their low investment at the running back position. I think that's going to be still a part of their offense, especially with Dak coming off of injury. So, I think he's got a lot of upside in the 3rd round. With Royals already off the board, which was tough, I think that was one of the best upside picks that I could have made.
I like that pick.
Go ahead, Chris. Take it away.
No, I was just going to say Jaden Blue, I think, is a guy that I wasn't necessarily super excited going into the process, but the more tape I watch, this guy makes people miss. Now, if he's going to, get tackled, he's having a hard time kind of breaking tackles, but he's really quick. He has a lot of explosiveness. He gets into space really well. And as Adam alluded to, this team's kind of built to be a pass-first team in a lot of ways. You look at Schottenheimer's pass, he always had a passing down back, whether it was DJ Harris, go back to the Jets, he always had a pass catcher. So he's always like to evolve those guys. But this guy's got a little more pop than that. And I think that's one thing. You got Dak Prescott, a guy who's willing to check the ball down with a good offensive line and a guy who's got pop. Quite often those things can, doesn't take a lot of touches for those guys to kind of be effective in fantasy. And I think he has a lot of upside, especially since he's the only one that has a contract moving forward after this year.
Well, that's the big key point, right? Like we know Jaden Blue is going to be on this roster. We don't know if anybody else is. And if you're in half point, full point PPR leagues, which most of you are, especially PPR when it comes to dynasty leagues, it seems, Jadon Blue is somebody who could have flex upside, even if he's not getting the bulk of the work. But who says he doesn't get a ton of work? I mean, they had to ride Rico Dowdle towards the end of the year. Who says Javonte Williams gets anything back or looks any better than he did in Denver? They ride that into the ground. I don't know what they do. And Brian Schottenheimer, I think he still has this reputation from his early days, from his dad and everything else, that he's this run first guy. He really hasn't been the past few years that he's been in charge of play calling. When you go to the last couple of years of Seattle, it actually turned more into a pass first team. Chris, I totally agree with you. This team is built to be more pass first. It's why I love CD Lamb redraft. Leads 200 targets possibly on the way, because they had also decided they weren't going to adjust the wide receiver position. Maybe a topic for another day. We'll see. But yeah, so Jadon Blue definitely a sleeper pick there in the third round. We fast forward to my third round sleeper running back pick that I decided to go with, and that's DJ Giddens. Now, this is somebody I think this whole board was higher on than consensus coming into this process. We like his talent. We know he's explosive ability. We know he can pass catch. Does he have some deficiencies? Sure. Like, I don't trust in the run block. And now on top of it, the draft capital was not as good as I was kind of hoping it would be. Teams not get as enthralled with his athleticism as we thought they might. But and Adam is the Colts fan here, so of course I'm going to pick on you a little bit. We know Jonathan Taylor has a hard time staying healthy, and I got to think that, like the fans, the coaching staff looks at Tremon Sermon and goes, yeah, I'm not getting a lot of production out of you. Khalil Herbert is a journeyman on his fourth team in as many years now at this point. Like, DJ Giddens could easily wind up being the number 2. And if Taylor continues to have ankle issues like he has the past couple of years, well, I think he might have more value than people realize. That's my opinion. I want to hear from a Colts fan, though.
Last year's deal, too.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. I think I have him graded right around this range. I mean, I'll be fully transparent. I was toss up between Blue, Neal, and Giddens at this point. I think that he immediately is going to step in and be one of the best handcuffs in fantasy football. Not overtaking Jonathan Taylor by any stretch of the imagination, and I would still imagine that Jonathan Taylor is in the team's future plans. But having said that, to your point, he's had some health issues, and even then, he's never been the best third down in the back in the world. So I think that there's opportunities to maybe sneak into some flex usage, especially depending on what the quarterback situation is, but definitely be a really high-end handcuff. So in the late third round, I think that's awesome.
Oh.
Yeah, Dan, and Ballard was even talking about using him in the third down and how much he likes the idea of using him as a pass catcher in his skill set.
That's a good point, too, because I forgot to bring that up. Steichen will have a third down back. Like, they don't like to go with Taylor in the third down situations. Now, I think somewhat to a detriment to their own, because I don't know why they act like Jonathan Taylor can't be a weapon in that scenario. But if they're going to continue to do that, at least DJ Giddens a hell of a lot better than Trey Sermon filling out that role, some actual explosiveness. So there's a possibility that he can have some flex appeal, or at least get you some value, even if you're holding on to him more as a handcuff or a future guy, depending upon what happens with Taylor moving forward on the Colts, and really, frankly, that whole regime, because there might be a regime change with Indianapolis. We'll have to see. My first fourth round pick, I decided to go with Tory Horton. Now, this is a receiver. Yeah, this is a receiver I like, but here's what I like even more. Like, he's a perimeter wide receiver who can stretch the field out. And that's always can be exciting for big play opportunities. But what I loved about him the most this past draft was that he landed on Seattle. Now, we're going to talk all day long about JSN and Cooper Kupp and the fact that they're going to eat into each other. Who's going to get more targets? They're both predominantly slot receiver, flanker receivers. Cooper Kupp, what does he even have left? And we have questions about how often can JSN win against press man coverage if he's going to be out there in the perimeter. They're going to fight over those roles. Tory Horton gets to be the X wide receiver on the perimeter with really no competition, because nobody else kind of plays his game on that roster, with Clint Kubiak, who, let's not forget, turned Rashid Shaheed into something for fantasy before he got injured last season. A very similar skill set between those two players. So Tory Horton, somebody in the fourth round, that's got super upside potential where you could see significant playing time. I don't know if anybody else is ready for. I mean, Chase, as the Packers fan, you're now the wide receiver, savant over there. Now, you guys finally took one in the first round. What's your take on Tory Horton going to Seattle?
No, I agree with you. I like the fit on Seattle. I know that Kupp is there, and there's been a lot of talk, like you said, of JSN and Kupp maybe eating into each other's roles. I think that they're going to put them on the field at the same time. That's the two best receivers they have, as long as Kupp is even a shadow of what he was, but he's not going to be there forever. And if it does turn out that he's literally a shadow of what he was, or if he gets hurt again because he has not had the best time staying healthy lately, they're going to need somebody else on the field anyway. So I think in 3 receiver sets, I think Horton finds his way on the field. I think he can beat out Jake Bobo. I know everybody loves Jake Bobo, and I'm sure he's a good dude and his mother loves him. But I think that Tory Horton can beat out Jake Bobo for that role, like you said, across the field from the other 2 guys. And I think in 3 receiver sets, he's on the field. That gets him a start there on the field. And then after Kupp is gone, now there's even less competition for targets. I like that. I like the landing spot. I agree with you there. And I like the pick because that's about where I have him too at the start of the 4th round there.
All right. Well, good. I'm glad everybody's on board because this will come into play when we start grading each other later. All right. So, Adam, your pick made me laugh because I knew you were going to do it. I knew you were going to do it, just considering how high he was on your board in the pre-draft process anyway. But you took Dante Thornton, who got drafted by the Raiders in day 3. Talk a little to me about Dante Thornton here.
Yeah, I mean, look, early day 3. Let's be a little fair. Early day 3.
Sure. Yeah, no, wasn't trying to knock him.
So this is someone who I think has a decent chance to be involved in this offense, and something that I did take a bit of a sly shot at Geno Smith earlier. I'm going to admit that. But I'm also going to say he has been amongst the best deep ball passers in the NFL over the last 3 years. Objectively, it's true. 95-plus PFF grade on throws over 20 yards each of the last 3 seasons. He has thrown over 60 20-plus attempts each of the last 3 seasons. And he has been in top 10 of 20-plus yard throws 2 of the last 3 seasons and was tied for 13th the other season. He pushes the ball down the field. I think this is like the perfect setup for a Dante Thornton if you're going to be successful. And I think I'm in the 4th round, where like trading a 4th round pick is like maybe someone that you might ever play. Like, to me, the gamble of one of the best speed size combination wide receivers we've seen in the last 15 years. Like, I think it's a fair gamble. He's someone who I think the conversation where you can talk yourself into him at least like making it as the 3rd wide receiver here isn't that crazy. Like, Besh for sure ahead of him, Jacoby Myers for sure ahead of them. After that, I think you can very easily argue he's that next guy. And then at that point, you're catching deep balls from Geno Smith, which has been a pretty good gig to have over the last few years. So again, I think in the 4th round, it's a very valid gamble regardless of my pre-draft notions about him.
Well, and Geno's especially good when he has play action available to him. And since they took Ashton Genty, who we didn't even get to talk about because he went to the computer and not to one of us, with that 1st round pick of theirs, and they have Chip Kelly, who's going to run a system based around, play action and RPO looks. It does wind up fitting. And it's similar to what I talked about with Seattle and Tory Horton, right? Like, they have a bunch of guys who are kind of running the intermediate part. Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and then their 2nd round pick in Jack Besh. They all operate in the intermediate middle part of the field. Dante Thornton's the only guy who's going to be an ex-perimeter who can actually stretch the field. So he might get playing time earlier than maybe we would suspect. Now, my caveat would be that I don't think Chip Kelly believes in throwing the ball past 20 yards, but they do have Geno Smith, so maybe that changes here a little bit. Hopefully it does. We don't see Geno Smith. We don't see the Chip Kelly of old, or the one even frankly we saw in Ohio State. And I think that's kind of what worries me, is that's still kind of recent. But I like the pick there. Chris, you went with Orondre Gadsden, or more like I picked him for you because you couldn't figure out your draft app there. But why did you want Gadsden so bad?
Well, 2 reasons. One, you guys took off 2 of the guys I was hoping to get my hands on. Number 1, Horton is a guy that, Chase was talking about Jake Bobo. He's got to beat out MVS. That's what he has to do. He has to beat out MVS, and he's got opportunity. Who's only got a 1-year deal. And you have a guy who is in the offense that Clint Kubiak loves to use 3 receiver sets. So I think there's a lot of upside that can be down the road for him. Then I look at Thornton. I'm with Adam. We talked about this, pre-draft. How about we're both very big fans of this guy, that these kind of guys aren't, found very often. And the fit is where I'm excited about. We've seen not just, I know you got questions about Chip Kelly, but we've seen historically that Pete Carroll loves tall, long receivers, and he usually figures out a way to get them involved some way, somehow. Go back to days with Mike Williams back in USC, who was slow as could be, but somehow was still effective for a year or two here and there because he figures out how to use those big receivers. And he likes to push the ball down and take those play action shots, as you guys are alluding to. So I think Thornton was the guy I was trying to get my hands on. Dan, I was going to go with Smith, who you're going to talk about a little bit after. I love Smith's upside, but I went with the guy that I felt like a position that I hadn't drafted yet, and I wanted to kind of talk about, and a guy I think is one of the sleepers that could have the more upside. We're talking a lot about swinging for the stars in the sense for what you're trying to get for upside, and Gadsden to me is the closest thing I've seen come out to Isaiah Likely in the last 4 or 5 years, a guy who I think absolutely can be that glorified slot tight end receiver. I don't worry about him actually being a receiver versus a lot of these guys who come out, run 4.7s, 4.8s, and 6'3", Dalton Kincaid's of the world are guys I'm not big fans of, but guys who I am impressed with are guys who can be able to be attacked super effective in the red zone. This guy's like a pterodactyl out there, Dan. He's got like an 83-inch wingspan, and he's gotten better as a blocker. He's a willing blocker, so there are a lot of things at 240 pounds. He could probably even pack a little bit more, but I think he's definitely going to be a pass catcher. And in an offense that we talked about has different weapons that they're going to be able to utilize. Greg Roman was able to, is why we have Isaiah Likely in today, and he's back with a guy who knows how to utilize them. And we know historically Greg Roman loves his tight ends and those kind of guys. So I think this guy has some upside. Tyler Conklin's a little older. Disley's probably going to be his last year there. So I think you get 2 tight ends on the way out and a guy who could absolutely be a great weapon for Justin Herbert moving down.
Well, and 2 tight ends who, frankly, are better as blockers on top of it. They need another little weapon there. Greg Roman's
I mean, he's just also Stone Smart used a little bit last year until he got a contract for the Jets this year.
No, exactly. I mean, Greg Roman's not an offensive coordinator who likes to play a lot of 3 receiver sets as it is. He will go 2 tight ends, and Gadsden's the only offset to that. Everyone's been dying for the Chargers to get a tight end. They didn't wind up getting Loveland, so you got to get thrown off. But getting on Rondre Gadsden late, yeah, that's definitely a flyer you need to be taking there in the 4th round. So I do like the pick quite a bit there. Now he's a specialist. And they had Gerald. They had Gerald Everett for a time, right? Well, maybe not
back in the day.
But back
that was Roman.
And I think that's kind of his worst case scenario. And even Everett had some waiver potential here. And maybe he's got a little bit more potential now that he's been drafted by this regime in particular. So Andre Gadsden, yes, somebody you get that 4th round. If you're in rookie drafts where there's 5 rounds, he's somebody who might fall in that 5th round territory. So we're talking deep sleepers here who have some pop. That is definitely one of them. Chase, we finally get back to you, and I just realized who you took with your 4th round pick. He had to get 1 Green Bay wide receiver in there. So he takes Savion Williams at the 4th round. Talk about that.
Well, after Gadsden went, because Gadsden was up next on my queue, to be dead honest with you, the choice was between Williams and Isaac Tesla, who I'm now going to go outbid everybody for on the waiver wire in this league. But
keep it a secret.
Savion Williams, listen, there's 876 guys in that Green Bay receiving room, right? But Christian Watson cannot stay healthy. I love the dude when he's on the field, but the problem is you're only going to have him on the field for about 3.5 games a year, it seems like, for about 15 minutes at a pop. Romeo Doubs might get a concussion if we say his name too loud, so I'm not going to talk too much about him. There's no guarantee that Doubs and Christian Watson are on this team long term. So now you're looking at there are open spots available for guys like Dontavian Wicks, like Savion Williams, to move up in the rankings later on with a still young quarterback in Jordan Love, that can be part of this high-powered passing attack. And I'm willing to take a shot on a guy like Savion Williams at 6'4", 200 and runs the speed that he does too. His speed, we just talked about a big speed guy in Dante Thornton. Savion Williams, not quite as fast, but still a good combination of size and speed there. That's a shot I'll take late in the 4th round.
It's kind of like what Adam said. When you get in the 4th round of your rookie drafts, you're taking big swings on upside players because typically speaking, these are guys that are going to sit in your taxi squad, may or may never actually play for you. They're better as assets and potential than what they're actually going to provide for you on a week in, week out basis. Most of the time. Sometimes you get lucky, and that's kind of what you're hoping for when you go for the upside swing. I do want to bring this up. As somebody who had Savion Williams in their top 12, one of the few, in the pre-draft process, man, I was pissed he got drafted by Green Bay. Oh, man, I was so pissed he got drafted by Green Bay. It was so redundant because Savion, to me, this is not a true wide receiver. Maybe he develops into it if he gets the time to sit. Who knows, right? We never know with these guys. Sure, 100%. but he projects out. Again, he's Cordell Patterson. And I'm sure anybody who's been following the draft, you've heard that comp a million times. There's no one else to comp him to because he is that in-between running back type wide receiver. He had 8 drops last year. He doesn't really run routes, but he has the big athletic ability. I like him more even out of the backfield. Why is that a problem with Green Bay? Because they have Jaden Reed to run that role. That's why. Like, it was so annoying to me. And it was annoying they spent 4th-round draft capital because it's just enough to try to make you interested and just have the floor fall out from under you. That's what I feel like. You can defend your team if you want to.
Can I jump in real quick on that? Well, number one, Chase, great perspective. I was in the same boat where I had the last 2 guys I had on my board were Tesla and Savion Williams, because as we're talking about, I'm looking for guys who have high upside. This is a freak of nature. Dan, you talked about Jaden Reed. That's what actually got me kind of more excited about him going to Green Bay, where we saw Jaden Reed, why we even who Jaden Reed is and we even care fantasy-wise is good way he was able to do that rookie year and that utilization and kind of that hybrid role. We didn't see him get utilized in that role very much last year. And we didn't actually see him play very much slot either. So maybe he's not necessarily the guy who plays that role, but he put Savion in that role and he gave him the touches you were seeing Jaden Reed get. Now are you feeling a little bit better about maybe what you have going down, moving forward with this guy? And the same thing with Dontayvion Wicks, who he's got the same build. What's Dontayvion Wicks' issue? He drops the ball all the time. So you have a guy who could actually fill 2 needs for positions who are guys that maybe he could replace either one, but he might be better than both of them, especially physically. And I think that's what kind of got me a little bit more curious about, like, hey, yeah, the Jaden Reed thing's redundant, but they didn't use Jaden Reed in that role last year. If they use Savion in that role this year, then Jaden Reed bye-bye, but Savion might have some value.
Well, I have 2 thoughts on that front. One, it's kind of why we saw Jaden Reed's value tank last season in fantasy. So I'm a little bit curious to see if they don't go back to that well, because you need to utilize him properly if he's going to be one of your more prominent receivers, which if you ask LaFleur and the Packers, they would try to argue that he is. So I'd be curious to see if they kept him out of that role again. And then the second thing to what you're saying is that, yes, Dontayvion Wicks, known for his drops, he's still a far better route runner. And he's not even a route running savant, but he's still a far better route runner than Savion Williams is. I just want to underline that and score that. And so it's, again, I just wish he went somewhere else besides Green Bay. That's ultimately what it boils down to. I got no problem with the player, just have a problem with the landing spot. I did want to talk a little bit about Breshard Smith, because I want to talk about some guys as I'm looking over the draft here who could have been deep sleepers. And you mentioned KC. We mentioned, they have Pacheco. They brought him back. We'll see what he's got. They re-signed Kareem Hunt just because, I guess. And then they've signed Elijah Mitchell also just because, I guess. So you have 2 guys who are injury prone, 1 guy who's super old. And then you have Breshard Smith, who, no, he doesn't profile out to be a guy who could take over this backfield. But he's the only one that seems to have a unique skill set in the backfield, more explosive, more of a pass catcher. Adam, you look at Breshard Smith, is he on your board here, this 4th, 5th round territory? What do you think about him?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is about the range where I think he's on the board. I think that's a great call. To your point, like in Dynasty, explosive guys and guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield are really valuable. So that's a really good gamble down here.
It's just going to be interesting. And we know Kansas City will rotate through the running backs, right? Chris, you're shaking your head now. What's up?
Well, I'm hoping you guys change your mind on this, because this is a guy that I absolutely love in Dynasty. And I don't want to put the cat out of the bag, and I'm hoping you guys won't think about it this way, but why can't he beat Jerick McKinnon instantaneously in this offense?
Agreed.
Instantaneously in this offense. And they don't have a pass catcher. And why wouldn't he be in that role? And you've seen the Chiefs utilize that kind of guy. And to me, that's what they just drafted. And that's why I'm so excited about. You talk about great sleeper. I think he's got a really nice sleeper role moving forward, because this could be like your James White in the sense of the future, just a PPR machine for sure, but he could be even more than that.
That's a great point. Pacheco on 1st and 2nd, Smith comes out on 3rd down. And yeah, we've seen guys be productive in that role for Kansas City from a fantasy standpoint before.
Especially the speed receivers they're going to have. They're a lot of attention as well.
Yes.
And this is a volatile running back room in general.
Right.
We still don't know that Pacheco's good. We still don't know that Kareem Hunt is even going to be last year's Kareem Hunt, let alone good.
Yeah, and as a 49ers fan, I can tell you all, Elijah Mitchell will not make it to week 1. So it definitely all plays out into that scenario for Breshard Smith. Definitely one of the top sleepers that needs to be on your board, given his skill set. And it's not like when the Chiefs decide to stick with a running back, good things happen. And they had Pacheco, who was a 7th round pick, and that didn't stop them from playing him either. So don't think this is as long of a shot as maybe some may. I'm trying to look at the other board here and just to see interesting falling spots. Go ahead, Chris, jump in there, and I'll have somebody else.
Well, I was just going to ask you guys, talking about pass catching running backs. I know Chase loves PPR, and it's how he kind of rates his board. We talked about that before. But some of the PPR running backs, how about Marks in Houston, who's almost probably immediately going to get that 3rd down role? We know Joe Mixon is a guy that they always pull off the field. And then you also, I'm not a Marks fan, Dan, I know, talent-wise, but he's going to have that role more than likely.
No, I agree.
And then
just get this out there real quick. I cannot believe Houston took him that high. All the running backs that you had to choose from, and you take Woody Marks, who's like James White but slower, and that's who you took in the 4th round. Like, I had to get that out. I couldn't believe that's what happened.
No, I totally agree.
The draft before that too. Sorry, but
I was too. No, I had it, and like I said, this isn't a guy who I'm excited about talent-wise, but we saw them play Darren Ubale last year to 3rd down a lot of times because they want to have a pass catcher out there, and he definitely is going to be a guy that you see the draft capital was spent. They're going to use him, and then the other guy that kind of similar to that, who's a late flyer that kind of keep on your radar, is Allen in Jacksonville. They kind of they danced around kind of the running back position. I love, Tootin. We didn't really talk about where he's going to be. He'll be on that chain of command, but we've seen those pass catching guys, especially in Tampa Bay, how they're utilized. He profiles a lot like Rachaad White, especially as his big hands, not a great runner, but a really good pass catcher. So he could be a guy in the 7th round for a team that's going to probably move on from Travis Etienne after this year. We don't know what Tank Bigsby is for this new regime, but these are 2 players the regime picked and do kind of fit guys that they had in Tampa Bay. So he's another guy. I think Allen is a guy that you might draft, maybe your 5th rounder, but a guy I think you should definitely keep on your board, especially in the full point PPR board leagues.
Let's talk about Tootin real quick, because he went in the 2nd round in this mock draft, and that's where I've consistently kind of seen him going in actual rookie drafts. And it's to your point. I mean, you do still have Tank Bigsby on the roster. You do still have Travis Etienne on the roster. Having said that, you have a new coaching staff, right? And Liam Cohen. Now, what made Tampa Bay super successful? And I'm not talking about just, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, the passing attack. What really made that offense go, what really made it improve, I should say, from Dave Canales to Liam Cohen, was that he got the running game going. That was the biggest thing. And they did some things to address the offensive line. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last season with it. And I still have some questions about how good it's really going to be. But Liam Cohen has a clear-cut plan on how to use different types of running backs. And I do think Travis Etienne, I don't think he's as bad as what we saw last season. Like, he's too young to have fallen off a cliff the way that he did. I think Tank Bigsby has a role. But to your point, Travis Etienne, clock's ticking. He might not be on the team after this year. Tank Bigsby's not good enough, I say, to solidify that too. Bashaw Tootin's someone we got crazy about because of what he did at the combine. And I wouldn't be surprised if he finds his way on the field sooner rather than later. Again, I'm sticking with my Jamal Charles comp. I don't know. What's your outline here, Chase? Bashaw Tootin, if you're drafted in the 2nd round, what would be your mindset behind that?
Yeah, if I'm taking Bashaw Tootin in the 2nd round, which again, like you, is where I have him late in the 2nd round. Yeah, I guess it's definitely a play for the future. I don't think that it's necessarily a play that's going to pay off this season right now because, like you said, they still have Etienne and they still have Bigsby. And I tend to be I agree with you that I don't think Etienne is done, and I'm not quite as high on Tank Bigsby as I think a lot of people seem to be, and as the Jacksonville Jaguars seemed to be last year. But with that profile, with what he can do, and with what we saw Bucky Irving do under Liam Cohen last season, I'm completely willing to take a shot on Bashaw Tootin if Bashaw Tootin can become what Bucky Irving was last season and be that long term. Now we're talking. Like I said, if Bashaw Tootin becomes Bucky Irving in Liam Cohen's offense, Bucky Irving was like a revelation last year. And Bashaw Tootin, with his skill set, I think can be that same kind of guy. I don't think it happens necessarily this year because of Etienne and because of the logjam that's in that room. But I think between Allen and Bashaw Tootin, who we just talked about too, I'm higher on Tootin, obviously. But yeah, there's definitely room there with what we saw under a Liam Cohen offense last season in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch. I think some people were deterred a little bit because he landed in what is deemed a crowded backfield as of now. It doesn't mean it's going to be moving forward. And it's always interesting when you have a different OC too. I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't at least end the show talking about Travis Hunter. This is with the 4th pick, and this is even post-draft. Now we know he's on Cleveland. We're taking with the 2nd-round pick overall. It's still one of the more polarizing players that people are trying to figure out where's his value at. Now, some people still have him as their wide receiver 1, and they don't care, and they know his value's at the top. There's some people, I know myself, I think I speak for some other ones on this show, if you guys have listened, that we question a little bit of what he is as the wide receiver. And being that he is so dominant as a corner, are we sure he's not going to go that route? Chase, I want to clue you in first because you were actually at the press conference at the draft for Travis Hunter. So I want you to talk about what Travis Hunter said, and then I'll give you back what Liam Cohen said afterwards.
Yeah, well, I asked him right when he started the press conference. I said, well, have you talked to Liam Cohen? Have you talked to Loveland, the GM there, about what your role will be? And do you have any assurances on, whether you'll be able to fulfill your goal of being a two-way athlete in the NFL? And he said that he had not spoken to either one of them since his pro day, so he wasn't sure what his role was going to be. He still fully intends to try and play not just necessarily part-time both ways. He wants to be a full participant both directions. Now, obviously, he can't play 130 snaps, 140 snaps a game. But, he had no idea what their vision was for him on draft night. He was just as surprised by the trade up as everybody else was there. For my take, I can't see a guy being a full-time wide receiver and then coming out to just help out on defense, because I think that is a complete and total waste of Travis Hunter's talent. We've seen guys do that in the past where they come in as kind of an emergency safety or in the dime or whatever. I think that's a waste of Hunter's talent, but go ahead and give us what you had there on Cohen.
No, and Liam Cohen came out afterwards and said, we're planning on using him on offense first. He pretty much confirmed everything everybody in fantasy wanted for the most part, but they moved up because they want the ball in his hands there in Cleveland. Jacksonville. I keep saying Cleveland. That was my bad. Jacksonville. I will say this. I do think he complements well to Brian Thomas Jr. because I question exactly what his top end elite athleticism is for Travis Hunter. But with Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side, he doesn't have to be the deep downfield threat. He kind of gets to be the guy who gets to be intermediate, short, make yards after the catch happen. I like it a lot because, well, if he keeps going top 5, it's going to push other guys down that I actually want. We'll end the show on that. So you're listening to Operation Domination. Make sure you download us on your favorite podcast app. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you check out our videos on Fantasy Football Advice Network on the YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. Operation Domination on every single week. It's Dynasty month for us, so come back next week as we get you ready for years to come.